My guests are John David and Ben David. Gentlemen, welcome to our show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Jim.
You guys have a great story to tell us today. It's about the 20th annual Candlelight Memorial Service for families of, help me out, victims of
homicides.
Of homicides?
Exactly.
Thank you. John, tell us about it.
Well, thank you for allowing me to go first, Jim. That is my birthright. I'm actually 3 minutes older than my baby brother. And for those that don't know us, we're identical twins, and we're also neighboring district attorneys.
And tell us about the counties that you serve.
We service a 5-county region in southeastern North Carolina. Brunswick, Bladen, and Columbus is my jurisdiction, and Ben is New Hanover and Pender counties.
Right, right.
And so collectively, I service an area that's slightly larger than the state of Delaware. And what we've learned over time is that bad things happen to good people wherever you live.
Absolutely.
And the biggest cases in the criminal justice are those that involve homicide offenses. And so what we've tried to do on an annual basis is connect a community of sufferers around an event, and that is this Candlelight Memorial Service that's going to take place on November 20th, right out in front of Magnolia Greens.
This is the 20th annual. Let's talk about how it got started, and the name Bertie Frank comes to my mind.
It does. You know, Bertie Frank is a hero of mine. You know, she is somebody that turned you know, a personal tragedy into help for so many. The silver lining of her daughter's murder, which happened in 1994 when her daughter Amy was murdered here in Brunswick County, she decided to do something about that, and she created a group called Justice for Citizens, which has been a tremendous advocacy resource in this whole region, really. And she's the one that actually started this Candlelight Memorial Service 20 years ago. And so my brother and I are doing nothing more than carrying on a proud tradition of making sure that we're connecting folks who are similarly situated, who have lost brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, and children.
She's a hero, and we asked her to be on this show, but she's such a modest lady that she declined, but I want to talk about it.
Well, and that's where we
sure.
come in, because we're not. And I want to say this, that speaking for the dead is the most awesome obligation in the criminal justice system. And we do that in a courtroom, but once a year we also do that very publicly.
Right.
And to be clear, this night is about remembering loss, but also celebrating life, and really to bring awareness to what we call the ripple effect.
That's well said.
You know, when there's someone who loses a life, you know, the family, of course, is deeply impacted, and sometimes the entire community. And what we do on this night is recognize the heroes in our community, like law enforcement. Many of them are there. We recognize the families that are left behind, and we celebrate the lives of people, because sometimes they become famous through these incidences. And we're not here to talk about the one moment they died, but the whole life that they lived, and really celebrate that, because this night's about bringing peace to this region rather than about talking about violence.
And I know it's not your purpose just to ask large numbers of people to come to this event, but if there are those out there in the viewing audience that think they'd like to be a part of this, if they are victims themselves, are they welcome?
We would welcome them to come. In fact, they don't even have to have had a case handled by one of us or in this 5-county region to even have their loved one recognized. If they've lost a member of their family to a crime of violence, which can include, of course, guns and knives, but also, sure, you know, car accidents, we you know, put their picture in a PowerPoint display. We read out their name. We give them a moment to bring a rose forward in honor of their loved one. It's open to the public, and we are going to have many important guests there. But the real feature of this night is, again, to honor everybody who has been impacted by these tragedies.
Right. You cover the 5 counties, but you move back and forth from New Hanover to Brunswick?
So last year it was at my church, which is First Presbyterian in downtown Wilmington. The year before that it was the Odell Williamson Center over here in Brunswick. And we're returning to this side of the bridge again for this year, and John can tell you a little bit more about that.
Sure. Tell us about the Leland.
Yeah, well, this year we're pleased to be able to take it for the first time to the Leland Cultural Arts Center, which was recently opened this year.
Right.
And you know, what's remarkable about the jobs that we do is, you know, we don't have a budget that's given to us at the local level. All of our money comes to us from Raleigh, and so when we want to do a special event like this, we frequently have to rely on our community partners and ask for their generosity to recognize the importance of something like this and say, how can you help? This year, the town of Leland stepped up and said, we would love for you guys to host your annual event in our new facility. John Evans, the anchor of WECT out of Wilmington, is going to serve as our MC yet again this year. He very much gives back to our community,
Absolutely.
and he's been with us for the last 10 years at least. Judge Marion Warren, who is now the director of the Administrative Office of Courts, is going to serve as our keynote speaker. So, it's going to be the right people at a wonderful event facility. I will tell you, in the past, we've had Brunswick Community College has donated the Odell Williamson Center to us. We really rely on folks in the community who are leaders to recognize what it is we're trying to do, and they've been very gracious in coming up and helping us.
And if people are listening, want to come, we're not asking for money. Simply showing up is 100%. It's about supporting these families. While this is a public event, we get together with the families of these victims every month, and that's something these homicide family support groups.
That's the ripple effect that we were alluding to prior to going on air, right?
They don't teach you in law school what it's like to lose somebody. And very fortunately, many of us who handle these cases haven't had that direct experience. But these mothers, these grandfathers, these brothers and sisters have. And so we put them in touch with each other. They come to the trials. They're there at the pleas. They are there for each other for years and years. There's no such thing as closure when you lose a loved one from a crime of violence, but there is such thing as legal closure. We're not talking about bringing joy, we're talking about bringing justice. Joy comes later through this process of healing, and people can learn to find happiness again, and they often do that through relying on each other. So one really important facet of this evening is connecting these wonderful families to each other, because they've become a great source of support through the years, not only for those families, but for the prosecutors and police handling those cases.
For all of you as well.
Well, Jim, let me expand on that idea, because there is a common thread that connects everybody in the audience, and that is they've all suffered a traumatic loss in the context of a crime. Most of us in our living have experienced the loss of loved ones around us, and that's always traumatic. But how much worse is it when your suffering is tied to the criminal actions of another person?
Right.
And there's this whole extra layer of grief which goes along with not only the loss that you naturally experience, but the fact that someone's responsible for that. And then there's this bizarre and bewildering legal justice process that you're thrown into, not of your own making. And it's hard to understand. And so what we've really done is we talk to them in legal terms about what's happening at the homicide support groups. But more than that, we're connecting them with people that are similarly situated and say, they've been in your shoes. They know what it's like to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, to grieve over the holidays. And, we've been very intentional about always scheduling this event the weekend before Thanksgiving, because in our experience, anniversaries are difficult for families to deal with, and holidays are difficult. So we like to create a support group around people as they enter into the holiday season.
So it speaks so well for the two of you. I'm reminded that this is in your 5 counties, but not in most of North Carolina.
There's 100 counties in North Carolina, and it's only in 8 of the 100 right now, and we're 5 of those. And to be clear, we are carrying the torch from other people's great work. John Carricker, who was the DA who hired the both of us, started the Homicide Family Support Group in the 5th District at about the same time that Bertie Frank was doing Justice for Citizens here. And when both of us had the good fortune of being elected to this region, we wanted to make sure to combine both of those great efforts, and that's what this night's all about.
Well, it speaks so well for the two of you that you're much more than a prosecuting attorney. You're serving justice.
It's part of delivering a comprehensive picture of what it means to bring justice to a situation, because to be sure, there's what happens in the courtroom, and we take very seriously our obligation of speaking for the dead and bringing our A case in the worst incidents that happen.
Sure.
But there's more than that, and the other side of the story is really helping people as they grieve, walking them through a process, making them familiar with what's going to happen ahead, and then connecting them with families that are similarly situated.
Gentlemen, we're almost out of time. Let's remind our viewing audience of the time and place of this wonderful event.
Jim, it'll be scheduled the Friday before Thanksgiving, which this year falls on November 20th. It'll be from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Leland Cultural Arts Center, located right there in front of Magnolia Greens. And again, the town of Leland is helping to co-sponsor this event.
John David and Ben David,
thank you very much,
both.
Jim.
You guys do
Thank you for your
job.
service.